I tried to make certain there was a variety of genres on this list, and there was a lot of great science fiction in the 90s, so the choices were tough. Of course, most were quite well appreciated, which narrowed the field significantly. Lexx was not my first science fiction choice. Honestly, I'd never seen or heard of it until 3 weeks ago. However, my first choice was... well, that story will likely lead to its own video. Lexx was suggested by several people as a replacement option, so I gave it a watch. Wow, that was something. Is it great science fiction? Yes. It's good science fiction, certainly. Great comedy if you have the right sense of humor. And the most demented, drug-addled, dark show you'll ever see in any genre short of the news. Now, a couple of quick caveats before I go further. First, I'm primarily talking here about seasons 1 and 2. While the show lasted for 4 seasons, I'm told seasons 3 and 4 carried a vastly different tone, with the philosophical and moral questions becoming more blatant, attitudes becoming far more serious. Apparently those seasons might have well have been a different show, so I'm focusing on the truly weird here because it's what I love best. Secondly, the argument could probably be made the show is too strange to be truly considered underappreciated. It's more that not enough people are able to appreciate it. This is a good point, it's worthy of consideration. My counterpoint would be, this is my list, and I think the weird is always underappreciated. Get weirder, normies. Now, back to our regularly scheduled WTF breakdown. Lexx involves a group of escaped criminals. A love slave named Zev with a little bit of lizard in her. No, that isn't a euphemism. A robot's head who was accidentally given consciousness and is hopelessly in love with Zev. An assassin named Kai who has the unfortunate complication of being dead.
Well, it just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead.
A cannibal named Gigarata who is... there. And the arch-traitor Stanley Tweedle, who is the most startlingly whiny and annoying hero you can imagine.
I don't like sand.
Yeah, worse than that. The fugitives are all marked for death for various crimes, on the run from the bureaucracy of a planet called the Cluster, which is ruled by a deified entity called the Shadow. My best description for the opening shot of the planet would be, imagine Jim Henson Productions started to work on a sequel to Labyrinth, and hired Stanley Kubrick to direct, but then someone handed him the script for 1984 by accident. Our, heroes have stolen the Lexx, the most destructive spaceship ever created, and designed mainly for blowing up planets. Imagine if the Death Star looked like a dragonfly without wings. Or a penis, depending on the angle and your mood at the time. The episode's first season of the show are more like made-for-TV movies, 4 episodes of about an hour and a half each, all of which could have been an hour, but I assume the writers were being paid by the word. Also, these are TV movies if you imagine that they were written on shrooms, performed while stoned, and filmed in your parents' basement on a budget of about $50. The best description I've found so far is imagine if the creators of Farscape had only half the budget, and now imagine they spent half that budget on drugs. The intro segment is an overly long exposition of what came before, rattled off in a monotone by Lexx, the ship, who otherwise has no independent thought in the show. Each episode in Season 1 is a bizarre compilation of events that all cover, in no particular order, Zev's attempts to bring Kai back to life in the hopes that he will bed her, Stanley rather grotesquely trying to convince Zev she somehow owes him sex, 790 composing Zev erotic poetry and insulting Stanley, Kai reminding them to stop reanimating him for stupid reasons or he will be all the way dead.
Now, all dead? Well, with all dead, there's usually only one thing that you can do. Go through his clothes and look for loose change.
And the random, and I do mean random, encounter of the episode. I wasn't on drugs when I watched it, but I really felt like I was. Or maybe that I should be? The second season is 20 episodes, more standard lengths of about 45 to 50 minutes each. It has an actual startup, coherent plots in each episode, I'm using that term loosely, an overarching storyline, and character development. Okay, that last one was asking a bit much, but I mean, they tried. Overall, it's more of a standard sci-fi show. At least in comparison to Season 1, it's still pretty damn strange. Both seasons involve a lot of sexual references. Don't expect them to be family or prude-friendly, though the show seems to be less about sex than about the value we place on beauty and the danger of chasing fantasies. There's also an emphasis on the need for intimacy with others, social status, on the need for food. Basically, while fanciful on the surface, the episodes are grounded in things living beings need. In Season 2, Episode 5, Stanley comments on Zev, "She never learns," as she goes running off, and then he too is immediately sucked into the same trap. While it's a meta-statement, it's a great commentary on how often people return to similar situations in an effort to get their needs met, even when those situations have failed before. Even 790, despite being a robot, is ensnared by these tricks due to the incident that gave him life and allowed him to feel emotions. Only Kai, who is dead and therefore lacks motivation for sex, food, and companionship, is regularly able to rescue them. One of the complaints about the show is that Zev is a standard damsel in distress. She's scantily clad and frequently in need of rescue. However, those complaints ignore that Stanley and 790 are in those situations at least as often as she is, if not more. She is ensnared not because she's female, but because she's alive and has the needs that all living beings have. In addition, it's mentioned several times in the show that she's been genetically altered to be a love slave and supposedly has irresistible urges for sex. Yet she's repeatedly able to differentiate the lusts of her body from what she wants as a woman, far better than Stanley is able to. These go a long way to making Zev more than just another screaming damsel in a sci-fi show. Lexx isn't for everyone, certainly. It's simply too peculiar to find value with certain types of audiences, and the humor will be too dark for everyone to appreciate. The graphics are tacky even by 90s standards, I think intentionally. To paraphrase another comment I've seen about the show, you don't watch Lexx because it's great, you watch it out of sheer bewilderment that something like this was ever made. In my case, and I hope for other fans of the show, that bewilderment is also filled with delight. The joy that once upon a time, the lords of television allowed something so completely original, deep, unique, and batshit crazy to be made.
Has been. Might again.